Welcome to the Immigrant Entrepreneurs Show, where our mission is to inspire, impact, and influence other immigrant entrepreneurs to follow their dreams and create the future they want. My guest today is Nick Jain, the CEO of Ideascale. Nick, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me here today, Ali.
So, Nick, I was doing some research on you and learning more about yourself and your background. You're obviously an immigrant from India, and you grew up with your grandmother. Tell us more about that, and give our audience a little bit an idea of where you grew up and how you grew up.
Sure, I have a bit of a weird immigrant story. I was born in Canada my parents immigrated from India to Canada in the 1980s. So I was born in Canada, but because as recent immigrants, they couldn't afford to take care of me. Right after birth, like I was probably a couple months old, they sent me over to India. So from age like 3 months till age 5 years, I grew up in India with my grandmother. I didn't actually meet my parents till I was about 5 years old. Um, and so at age 5, when my parents, at this point, they're a little bit more established in Canada. They've, got a house or rental apartment at that point. And they can, and now I'm about to start preschool or kindergarten. They brought me over because now they don't have to pay for childcare during the day, right? And so from age 5 to 18, I grew up in Canada in a small town called Langley, it's near Vancouver. And then from 18 onwards, I've been living in the United States. I initially came over for college and then stayed for work, for graduate school. I fell in love and got married. So I've been in the United States now for 18 years and became a citizen just last year.
Awesome! Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
So, Nick, tell us about. Obviously, I mean not obviously, but I know that you graduated as a on top of your class from Harvard Business School. So, tell us how your journey started, and what took you to Harvard, and then what happened from there.
Sure. So my undergraduate degree was in math and physics, and when I came into college, I wanted to go into research science. I wanted to go become a PhD in physics or math, and I tried a bit of that, and I liked it a lot. But realized I really like working with people. I really like working in companies and building things, rather than just doing pure research. So for the first 10 years or so of my career, I went on Wall Street and worked as a professional investor in private equity and hedge fund deals. And one of the things that's very common is if you're working in finance, you're expected to go get an MBA. So after working a couple years in finance, I did the thing that many other people do, which is go apply for an MBA. I was very fortunate, got to Harvard, obviously a good school. And then after leaving Harvard, I continued working in finance for a couple of years. And then somehow, about 4 or 5 years ago, I was hired or scouted to do something really unusual, which is being a professional CEO. So people now so either private equity firms or founders hire me to run companies that are ready for that next stage of growth. So this is the third company I've either run or co-run now. First was a $100 million revenue trucking company. Second was a small $2 million men's shoe startup. And now I run a mid-sized software company, Ideascale.
Right. And when I listen to you talk about all these different industries that have basically nothing in common when it comes to the actual product or the industry, what does it take to be successful as a CEO in different industries? Is there a commonality that you would say there is something that I can hold on into when it comes to being a successful CEO?
Sure. The first for me is just work my butt off, right? When I'm entering a new industry that I don't know anything about, I just work really, really hard to go become an expert on the industry, right? So showing up at a trucking company, I knew nothing about trucking, but I spent like 6 months learning everything possible. So I was, at one point a world-class expert on domestic trucking. Um,
Mm.
but setting aside me, I think there are a couple things that are similar across all private sector organizations. Number one is they're all comprised of people, and people are very similar, right? They're motivated by the same hopes, dreams, ambitions, motivations. So, how you motivate people in company A is not going to be that different versus company B. That's kind of consistency. Number two is all companies have the same sections. the sections may vary in importance, but each company has the same section. So every company has a HR department that's responsible for hiring, training, firing people. You have a sales department, a marketing department, a technology department, a product department. Now, the product of a trucking company is trucking, the product of a software company is software, but you can still think of it as sections. And if you become really good at running marketing for one company, if you actually were really good, that is a very transferable skill. Same with if you know how to run human capital for one company, you can very well run it for another. And then third is the mechanics of how businesses work. And this is something I'm personally both passionate about and think I'm good at, which is, look, I was trained as a mathematician and physicist. I understand how machines work. And a company, you can think one way of thinking about a company, it's not the only way, is to think of it as a very complex machine that has its own kind of laws of physics, right? So if you understand how the machine of a company works, then you're going to be very successful at running it. So in software, for example, well-run software companies, there's three numbers that really matter. There's three kind of laws. You need to grow revenues, you need to retain existing customers, and you need to do so profitably. Those are the kind of three numbers that matter. And number four, you need to make decisions that create value every step of the way. If you understand how the math of all of those work, then every day you're making decisions, you and your team and the entire company is making decisions that help you move forward. And that's true again, whether you're in trucking or shoes or software.
I see. Where would you say your own strength is at from all the things that the CEO need and you as a CEO need? Where would you say is your zone of genius?
That's a loaded term. I think there's two things. Number one is I'm extremely good with data and analytics. I understand how numbers work and data works really well. Number two is I'm creative at making deals. And that could be deals with employees, that could be deals with business partners or consulting firms, that could be deals for acquiring a competitor. I think I'm very good at realizing that, hey, Ali wants to do this. I can't exactly give him what he wants, but I can give him what he wants in a different way that works for me, and coming out with really creative structures on how to do this. And again, this could be an M&A structure, or it could be a compensation structure, or just a working style structure. Like, hey, you can only work 4 days a week, but turns out you don't work Sunday. If you want to work Sunday, I don't care as long as the work gets done, right? Whatever works for your lifestyle. But that can also be taken again on. I've done multi-million-dollar deals that are very, very complicated but creative.
So where do you learn to become a creative deal maker?
Three ways. Number one, studying it, right? There's lots of people who've done really creative things. I study what they do, or I either intentionally study or have observed what they've done over time and just learned and remembered that, hey, somebody was able to solve this problem this way. You don't have to reinvent the wheel every time. Number two is my background. I was trained as a theoretician, which means I think about the theory and then think about how that applies to practice. So when you say, hey, I want more free time as an employer, I want more upside in an M&A context, I think about why you're asking for that and how I can help you achieve your goal. So rather than thinking about the tactic, I think about the strategy or the theory. And that if you're thinking about the theory of, hey, here's how you make Ali happy, then you can figure out other ways to make him happy that work for you and aren't necessarily just what he asked for. And number three is, look, when I don't know the answer to a problem, and this is particularly relevant recently, I go ask AI, right? Like, okay, here's the constraints I'm working under. Here's what Ali has asked for. Here's what my counterparty's asked for. I can't meet him because of this. Help me come up with creative structures. I have no ego about using AI to help me make better decisions now that it exists.
Right. That's awesome. And Nick, when you talk about, because I'm interested in deal structure, creative deal structure, and I believe our audience is too. So when you talk about structuring a deal, because you know, we hear all these gurus when it comes to M&A, they talk about, we're in the phase of the biggest wealth transformation because all these baby boomers own these businesses and now they need to either sell it or close it. You can come up with with ideas how you can take over a business from a baby boomer. And most of them teach, or that's what they promise, right? You can structure it with zero money out of pocket, or some of them even say with zero money down, which I believe if you want to take over a healthy profiting business and you don't want to put anything down, it's not impossible, but it's very hard. Okay. So my question is basically to you: do you think that is possible in nowadays, that people all they or most they care about is money and how much money they can get out, and that's what they're primarily interested in? So what's your take on that?
Sure. So I don't think everyone in the world is motivated only by money. There's lots of things that matter to people, whether it be lifestyle, legacy, fame. Money is one thing, but there's many things that motivate people, right? So, and again, if you go back to the fact that people are motivated by many things, how can you help them achieve the other things? Because money's not when we're having a negotiation, let's imagine you're selling me a business. The negotiation is not just about money. If it is, okay, then there's nothing else to talk about, right? But well, first of all, let's talk about the other types of motivation you have. You may have built a business and you want to make sure that your name remains on the door. Ali's hardware store. Well, you don't want me to change the name. That could be an important part
Mhm.
to you, right? It could be that you have family members working there and you want them to continue on in the business and have jobs. There's all these other things that we can negotiate about. But then even within money, there's other ways to structure things. So earnouts, right? Equity, seller's notes, debt financing. There's all these kind of creative things that you can do. So I'll give an example. There was an M&A deal I was working on with a French company, based in Europe, and or sorry, it wasn't based in France. It was based in Europe, just broadly. Um, and in that situation, the company wanted to sell because it was subscale. They knew that by merging with Ideascale, both companies would be better off. The problem was the company didn't make money. The good news is the founders and venture capitalists behind that company, they'd been in for a long time. They realized they weren't going to make money by themselves, right? So they knew that there was a partner, and they also wanted to remain. They realized they built a really good company, and they wanted that company to continue and not be kind of destroyed structurally. So on the money side, we said, look, we gave them two options. We said, okay, here's deal structure one, here's deal structure two. Deal structure one has a little bit more money up front, but it has less upside. Deal structure two has less money up front, but it gives you a lot of upside because you get equity. You get equity in Ideascale, right? So if the merger works and really well, then they make a lot of money because they are part owners of Ideascale. So we gave them options, and both the options had kind of interesting structures on delayed payments. They had earnouts, they had equity, and again, we were very creative. And the cool thing I think we did there is we gave the seller of this European company the option, like, hey, which option do you prefer, right? We want to get this deal done because we think 1+1 = 3 here. But for us to accomplish this, we have to negotiate a deal that works for both parties, right? Because you know that you have to sell, and because you're not going to be successful by yourself. So let's merge together and create more value for everyone. And I think that was a philosophy they really agreed with, it, that, hey, merger is good for everyone here. Now let's work around how we figure out the money side of things, it was important, right? Money matters, especially when there's investors and venture capitalists, but it wasn't the only thing that we needed to talk about. In fact, there were many, many other important things going on here.
I see. So, Nick, tell us how you ended up at Ideascale and what Ideascale exactly does.
Sure. I ended up at Ideascale totally randomly. About 4 or 5 years ago, I'd applied for a job, and someone had offered me that job, but it was it was running a small healthcare consulting firm, and I very politely said, "Thank you so much for the opportunity, but I know nothing about healthcare, and I'm not really excited about being a career consultant or running a consulting company." But I did so very respectfully and professionally. And I guess
Mhm.
the owner of that company was really impressed by me. And 2 years later, and we hadn't been talking for 2 years. He called me up and said, "Hey, Nick, a friend of mine runs this company. You really impressed me. Would you be interested in talking to this friend?" And so this gentleman introduced me to the one of the founders and owner of Ideascale, this gentleman named Viv, who's a serial entrepreneur. And Viv and I hit it off. I laid out a plan for Ideascale. Here's the things I think we can do to make the company more successful. And so, yeah, and that was 2 years ago. And I've now been at Ideascale as CEO for 2 years. In terms of what Ideascale does, we are the largest innovation software company in the world. Now with 100 employees, couple hundred clients, 8 countries. Clients are big companies like Pfizer, Comcast, U.S. Post Office, Transportation Safety Administration, like big meaty organizations. And what innovation software does is it is like the brains of how companies innovate. So you think about, if you are a finance department, you have an accounting software. If you are a sales and marketing department, you have a CRM like a HubSpot or Salesforce. Lots of companies have realized they need to innovate, they need to get better tomorrow, and they've started creating innovation departments. And we are the brains of their innovation department. We are the software through which innovation happens for large organizations.
So yeah, we need to talk more about that. So basically, can you explain that a little deeper? Okay, now what happens?
Sure.
They plug into your platform, and then what happens exactly?
Sure. So we have a couple different modules. The module that we are most famous for and that most of our customers use is what's called our idea management solution. So you can think of this like TikTok for ideas. You add this software to your organization, then everyone can participate. It could be your employees, it could be your customers, your shareholders. Everyone can submit ideas on how to make the company better. And these could be ideas as silly as what snacks you have in the kitchen to more serious ideas such as, hey, here's a new product we should build, or here's what our business strategy should be. So all of a sudden you have hundreds or thousands of people contributing ideas, and you have hundreds or thousands of other people voting up, voting down, commenting on ideas, making ideas better. So just like in TikTok or Instagram, the best ideas or best videos rise to the top, they go viral. Our software helps ideas go viral, because it's a social media platform for ideas. That's what we're most famous for, that everyone can put ideas into the software, they can rank ideas, they can vote on ideas, and then the best ideas rise to the top, and then they are the ones that the executive team of a company or organization turn into reality.
Right. Just making sure I'm getting this right. It's always so when ideas come up and people put their ideas up for vote, then this is always internally within the organization, right?
No, both.
Nobody
It could be
outside of the
inside or outside.
organization is going to see. Sorry?
It could be inside or outside. So for example, we use our own software. If you people want to go check it out, it's ideas.ideascale.com. There we have 2 secret communities that are only visible if you're an Ideascale employee, but then we have 2 totally public communities that anyone can participate in. One of them was to help us pick a new company mascot. That's over now because we've picked a company mascot. But the second is a perpetually running campaign where anyone in the world can say, hey, Ideascale, you need to add this feature to your software, or they can comment on other ideas that people have submitted. And the best of those ideas become part of our product. We use those ideas to help build our product every day.
Hmm. Can they also when you get feedback from people who are voting on the ideas, can they also tweak it a little bit, tweak the ideas, at least,
Yeah,
suggest
so
to tweak
exactly. Yeah, they
it
can
or
comment and
put
iterate on the
features up?
ideas. Yeah, they can comment on the iterate on the idea. So I can say, hey, Ali, you have a good idea, but I think you need to make let's imagine you have an example for a blue toy car. I can say, Ali, this is great, but the blue car would look better with stripes, as an example. So I
I
can
see.
vote for your idea, but I can also make changes to your idea, and that creates a much more collaborative system for, it's not just your great idea, it's the combined intelligence of your idea plus my comments plus the ideas of like 10 other people all melded together to come up with one great idea or 2 great ideas or 10 great ideas for that matter.
Right. So, Nick, when I'm thinking about that and imagining companies like bigger companies using Ideascale, is it also something that is going to help them with their innovation? Because, big companies usually become sometimes a little bit slow and maybe not as fast paced when it comes to innovation as a younger company. Is that something that is helping them?
Yeah, well, yeah, that's exactly why we exist. That's exactly who our customers are, right? Our software helps organizations do 2 things. It helps them innovate better, And number two, it makes employees more, or it makes your ecosystem, that could be your employees or your customers, more engaged with your company because they know you're actually listening to their voices. For the first use case on innovation, that's literally who our customers are. As I mentioned, our customers are like Pfizer, Comcast, US Post Office, Transportation Safety Authority, these big organizations that have been around for decades or hundreds of years. They know they need to do better. And when they decide they want to do better, they often come to us and say, okay, we need software that actually helps us do this better, rather than just kind of making up stuff as they go along. Again, we've been doing this for 15 years now. We're really good at figuring out how to make software that helps you innovate faster and better.
Right. And then what is the model? Do they pay you for using the platform, or what does it look like?
Yeah, so we're a software as a service company. So you pay for an annual subscription for to access to Ideascale. So your company does, or your department does. The one cool thing that I want to highlight about the way we price things versus many of our peers is
You
almost
just cut
everybody
off.
else in
Can
our
you repeat
industry.
that, please?
Yeah. So we charge you for an annual subscription the way almost all enterprise software works. You pay an annual subscription for your accounting software, your CRM software, your analytics software. Same with Ideascale. So your company or your department pays for that.
So it's
One
basically a
cool thing about
membership.
our Yes, but exactly membership to Ideascale. But the important thing that that I think is a little bit different than some of our peers. Actually, almost all of our peers charge you by user. Okay, so if Ali has 100 users and tomorrow you have 200 users, they're going to charge you twice as much. We don't do that. At Ideascale, we charge you one price for the entire company, and don't charge you by user, because the our entire philosophy is, look, we want as many people using our software and engaging and collaboratively innovating together. And if we start charging you by seat, then you're going to add less users to the platform and you're going to have a less vibrant community. So we charge you at a company level, not by seat, which is very different than I think a lot of other software companies do. The bad news is it makes us make less money. The good news is it's actually better for our customers. And that's a conscious decision we've made, where we've given up a little bit of money on our side in order to do right by our customers.
Right, right. Yeah, I like this idea. And so, Nick, how do people find out about you guys? How do you get in front of your customers, and how do you make them aware about that something like Ideascale exists?
Sure. I think two things that we do really well. Number one is our blog. We have the best innovation blog on the planet. And if you go to read any of our blog articles, they don't advertise Ideascale. They don't mention, they're not trying to sell our software. They're just really good content about
Mm,
best practices for innovation. Hey, if you want to run a fishbone diagram or 5 whys or figure out how to innovate better in healthcare, go read our blog. It's like world class. It's literally, if you ever Google innovation or anything related to innovation, it's usually like Wikipedia, Harvard Business Review, and Ideascale, and some combination of the three. So even Google thinks we are like really high quality content. That's number one. And number two is we often have innovation. We hold a monthly webinar series where we have innovation experts show up and talk about something really important in innovation. So in 2 weeks, for example, we have one of the writers of the International Standards Organization's Standard for Innovation, the guy who actually wrote what best practices are. He wrote the book, literally, the standard regulation. He's one of our speakers, Magnus Carlson. Totally free, totally accessible by anyone. And again, literally, it's not an advertisement for Ideascale, because all we say is like it's hosted by Ideascale, and then he talks. He doesn't even use our software, right? And so we have just really high quality content. That's how people figure out about us. The third thing is we give our software away for free for smaller organizations. So our software is completely free if you are on a team of less than 100 people. And that could be a team of
oh wow.
95 people in a huge organization. Software is completely free. You just go to ideascale.com, click get started. 30 seconds, you're up and running the software. And then obviously we hope that if you love our software, you either go to a different company or your team scales up, then you become customers of ours. But even if not, like we've done a good service for the world in the interim.
That's awesome, man. I've never heard of anything like this that is free for smaller organizations or companies. That's
Completely
amazing.
free, yeah.
That's awesome. Nick, I have a note here. Are you a poker player?
I'm a very competitive poker player. In fact, just to be very direct, I'm good enough that I could go make a living doing it if I wanted to become a professional. I don't though.
Oh wow. Oh wow. And tell us what poker. So number one, why you like poker, and number two, what do you see in common between poker and business entrepreneurship?
Sure. So what do I like about poker? Three things. Number one, it's mathy, right? There's a lot of math. If you're a good poker player, you use a lot of math, and that's my background. So I love, using my math skills. Number two, it's a social game. You're sitting around a table with people from all walks of life. There may be somebody who's homeless. There may be a CEO on the table. There's people of different groups. No one cares what you look like or what you're wearing. You're all just having fun together, and I like that. I love that social aspect of the game. Um, Number three is poker's a weird hobby where like 95% of the time you're not actually doing anything, right? So most of the time in poker, you're actually just folding hands because you have bad cards and you're not actually playing. And that gives you time to do a bunch of other things. So during that 95% of the time, I might be doing I might be studying a course, reading a novel, watching a cartoon, whatever gives me joy. So I can do two hobbies at once, which is just kind of fun. You can't do that if you're, running or jujitsu or
Right.
other things. In terms of what's common with business, I think there's two things that are really common that overlap between poker and business, or good poker and good executive leadership. Number one is analytical decision making or risk adjusted decision making. In poker, everything's a gamble. Even if you're really far ahead, you can still lose 10% time, even if you did everything right. Business is the same way. You could do everything right, and then COVID hits and your business is in trouble. So in both in poker and in business, you have to take calculated risks and ideally do them analytically with data, evidence, math behind it. That's number one. Number two is both poker and good leadership require emotional modulation because bad stuff will happen and good stuff will happen. You may just get very unlucky in a poker hand and you did everything right and you lose and you may have lost a lot of money. That hurts. It hurts you emotionally, but if you let that affect your decision making, then it's called going on tilt. You're making bad decisions because you got emotionally upset. The same happens in business. I may have a bad day in business. I may lose a client, and one of my colleagues may have said something that annoyed me. But if I let that impact my decisions, then I am
Mhm.
being a bad leader, right? So you have to learn good, strong emotional control, especially a CEO. People will say good things about you, but they'll also say bad things about you, and you can't let them, the bad things ever upset you or let you be unprofessional.
Mhm. I love that. Were you always like had you always this way of thinking, or did you learn this along the way?
Um, so look, I've always been a mathematically inclined person, but making good mathematical decisions was a learned skill. I learned that in college and when I was working in finance. People taught me, professors taught me, bosses taught me on how to make good decisions very carefully and very mathematically or very analytically. It doesn't have to be mathematically, but very analytically and carefully. Um, on the emotional regulation part, I think that is something that really comes from my parents. They instilled a strong value that no matter it's almost like the Bible thing, turn the other cheek, right? Um, we're not religious in my family, but the idea is like, look, it is no matter what the world does to you, you should hold your head up high. So if someone insults you, it's never a right decision to insult them back. What are you? You're not gaining anything. You're just now uh, creating a bigger fight. So that was something my parents always kind of impressed on me that you always want to do. No matter how someone treats you, you should always treat them with dignity and respect and never let the world upset you because there will be good days, there will be bad days in life. Your sense of happiness and self-worth has to come from within. Now, I'm not saying I'm certainly not perfect. I get upset at things all the time, but I think I'm reasonably proud to say that I do not make decisions in haste or when I'm upset.
Mhm.
If I know I'm upset or mad or angry, I just go do something else till I've calmed down because angry decisions are not good decisions in life. Or sad decisions.
Yeah.
Actually, happy decisions can also be bad decisions too,
Right.
right?
Right. I usually say decisions under emotions are not good decisions, no matter
Yeah.
what way, you know, because when emotions calm down, regardless of good or negative or positive, then you're like, when you're rethinking it, you're like, maybe I would have decided differently, you know.
Mhm.
So Nick, I wonder how much of the things that that contributed to your success and who you are today as a person was related or is related to your upbringing as an immigrant
A
from
huge
someone
portion.
who grew
Yeah.
up in a different country, different culture, different everything, then came to a different or a new country and had to adapt a lot of things. Tell me more about that, please.
Yeah, so the short answer is a huge part of who I am comes from my upbringing, as it does for most people, right? And specifically for me, having gone through an immigrant experience with blue collar immigrant parents, my father speaks, English with a very thick, broken accent. Um, Both my parents, for most of my life, my parents, well, they're retired now, but they're both blue collar immigrants. That's influenced a huge part of my life. And I think there's kind of three or four things that have stayed with me. Number one is I'm extremely cognizant that my success today is driven by decades of sacrifices by my parents and grandmother, right? So I'm not successful today because of something I've done over the last 10 or 20 years. Yes, I've worked hard, but it's because they, for the last 80 years, two generations of my family saved up money, worked their butts off to give me a shot. So that's 80 years of like forward thinking and investments, right? Um, so that's number one. I'm deeply cognizant that my success is the compounding of investment over decades, right? That's number one. Number two is look, and this is true of many immigrants. Your parents work really hard, and that rubs off on you, right? That hey, this is just what you're used to. It's not even about them making sacrifices. It's if you're used to everyone around you working hard, you work really hard. Like when I was working on Wall Street, everyone worked 100 hours a week or 80 hours a week. It's not abnormal. It's just that's what everyone does. That's the culture. And so when you grow up in kind of an immigrant household, um, everyone works hard. That's just normal, right? My father, for example, he would work night shift and then he would wait, come back at 2 a.m. and wake up at 6 every morning and make me breakfast, right? And then drive me to school and then sleep for a couple of hours and then begin again. And that's just the thing he did. And my mother did basically the same thing except on the reverse schedule. So that's normalized behavior for me, just to be working constantly, and that obviously gives you a huge advantage if you're just willing to work harder than everybody else. Um, Third is this notion that there's always a way to succeed. I think most immigrants come with a sense of optimism, right? People always talk about the American dream. Most immigrants end up in America or to wherever they immigrated to. It doesn't have to be the United States with the notion of optimism. I'm moving somewhere for a better opportunity, either for myself, my kids, my family, whatever it is. Um, and so there's an inherent sense of optimism, which means you believe in the art of the possible, as I call it, that things can be better. I just have to figure out how to do it. You don't say, hey, the world is against me or whatever. None of that matters because you always believe there is a way forward and you just need to find it. And that sense of optimism really supports me here. Like, if you think about it, like, how many, poor first generation immigrants kids get a shot to go to Harvard? Very few, right? But I never believed that, hey, just because my parents are not billionaires, I can't get in. I just had to figure out how to do it, right? That I really like that, and that's a huge part of like who I am today is those three things, right? Understanding the sacrifices people made to give me a shot, understand having hard work be a mentality that is just part of my normal culture, and number three, an internal sense of optimism. Tomorrow can always be better. I just need to figure out how to make it happen.
I love that. And I truly believe as entrepreneurs and business leaders, we have to be optimistic, because if you're not optimistic, then you won't do anything, right? If you believe
Yeah.
that the world is going to go under next week, then you're like, why should I do anything? So you always believe in a better future, in a brighter future. That's why we do what we do and push through the challenges and the obstacles and everything. So I completely agree with you on that. So, Nick, what is your advice to tech executives?
I'd say three things. Number one is I think a lot of tech executives are very good at the technology side, but they may be less good at the business side. If that's the case, go hire someone who's world class at that, right? Um, One of the mistakes a lot of tech executives make is they're really good at X, but they're not good at Y, and they try and do Y. No, just go hire somebody else to do it, right? Whether it be a co-founder, whether it be an employee, go hire somebody else. Like for me, I suck at art. That's why we have a whole graphics department. And when they ask me for my advice, I'm like, even though I'm the CEO, I have no idea. I'm not competent here. You guys decide, right? So that's number one. Go hire, so supplement your weaknesses with other people. Get other people who have strengths that complement or supplement your weaknesses. Number two, invest in continuous learning, especially in technology, but this is probably also true for all executives. Like, there's always new technology coming out that you need to learn and understand. I spend between 20 to 40 hours every month taking courses and new stuff because I need to continuously advance my own skill set. Otherwise, I'm not relevant, whether that be a new technology, whether that be a new co-pilot, whether that be a new programming language. I'm always studying new things so I can be relevant, right? And that's not just technical things. It could be a new digital marketing technique. Like, how do I advertise on TikTok versus Instagram? That's a fundamentally different way of advertising in one versus the other. And then thirdly, make sure you really believe in whatever you're selling, right? I think a lot of folks in technology get in because, hey, software is, it's sexy, it makes a lot of money, there have been a lot of billionaires, whatever it is, or it gets you on the news. But you have to believe in whatever you're selling, right? Your product or the problem that it solves. I genuinely believe in the idea meritocracy, that ideas are incredibly valuable and stand on their own merit. They help you achieve capital T truth. And that's basically what our product sells. It's a philosophy that comes from like way back in my math education, that I believe in ideas. And I'm really happy to be at a company like Ideascale. And I hope that many other executives or tech executives go work for companies where they believe in their company's product truly.
Great advice. So am I hearing you also saying that if you're good at something, then focus on what you're good at instead of learning something that you suck at, and let people do what they're really good at?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And get out of, I would go a step further. If somebody else is really good at something, don't get in their way. Let them be
Mhm.
extraordinary at whatever they're good at.
So that means also trusting your team and your the people you have around yourself, right? Because
Yeah.
as a CEO or as a leader, we oftentimes also want to control things, and oftentimes also control things beyond our control, which means now we're maybe giving advice on the things that are not within our expertise.
Yeah. Like for me, look, I want to control everything in life. That's okay. But I am very explicitly conscious that these are the things I'm good at and these are the things I'm bad at. And so I get at Ideascale, I try and only get involved in things where I know I'm actually world class at. If there's something that I'm not world class at, I very clearly tell my team, like, it's your decision. Like, I'm not any input that I'm going to give is probably going to make us arrive at a worse solution, and that's bad, right? So what's that old joke? Better to be thought a fool than open your mouth and prove it. The converse of that is, look, if you know you're bad at something, just keep your mouth shut. And I try and do that.
Right. That takes a lot of self-reflection, I believe. So, Nick, if somebody is listening to our interview, our conversation, and is like, "Hey, this sounds very intriguing and very interesting, but I'm not sure if it's for me or my organization or not," please tell us or tell our audience, who is this for and who is it not for?
Sure. So first of all, innovation, everyone needs to be innovating, whether you're running a one-person hardware store or a, 100,000 person company. Innovation, everyone needs to do. That could be better processes, better technology, better products, whatever it is. So innovation is for everyone. Our software is typically sold to large organizations, typically those who have more than 1,000 employees. And again, we're serving customers in every industry, public sector, private sector, nonprofit, all over the world. That's who our paying customer base is. However, our software, because innovation is for everyone, and because the needs are actually very similar to small or large organizations, our software is offered completely free for anybody who's working on a team or organization of less than 100 people. So just go to ideascale.com. You can use our software. If you don't like it, that's okay. If you like it, use it. That would be great. And if you really love it and you're working for a large organization, go talk to my sales team. That would be awesome if you became a customer.
Awesome. Nick, thank you so much for coming on the show. I truly enjoyed this conversation. And I'm sure our audience is enjoying this conversation. If somebody wants to reach out to you, number one, is that possible? And if you say, yeah, I'll be open to give advice and yeah, open to connect, where would they be able to connect with you?
Sure. Yes, people can reach out to me. The best way to do so is my LinkedIn. My name is Nick Jain, Jain. I'm usually the first search result on LinkedIn globally. And yeah, DM me. I will respond to 100% of messages, so people are free to reach out and they will get a response.
Perfect. Once again, thank you so much for coming on the show and giving so much value to our audience. And all the best to you and much success to Ideascale.
Thank you as well, Ali, for having me.